Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. I'm your host, Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers. Sitting next to me, Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouses. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. We promise we'll keep this very entertaining for you, but at the same time, hopefully give you some tips and some snippets to bring back into your business to help you grow. If you are a regular follower, listener, viewer, thanks for all the support. We certainly appreciate it. We're going to introduce here in a second Will Matheson from Matheson Capital. We're going to go through his story, talk to him for a little bit before we got started, and it's pretty interesting. I'm excited to hear about it just because he concentrates more on the multifamily and the student housing sector, although I think Ian and I are familiar with multifamily assets, investing in those. The student housing stuff is new to me, and just like someone that Ian and I look up to, Sam Zell, before he died, he was heavily focused early on in his career with student housing. So it was always very interesting to me.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun to hear, especially, hearing someone, similar, seems to be somewhat of a similar path, seems like a little bit of a jump start, but it's always fun to hear people on their success stories and journeys. Guys, if you get any value out of this, the best thing you can do, we don't ask for any money. We don't have sponsors. We don't bring in gurus. We bring in real people that are doing real deals. So if you get any value out of this, please feel free to like, share, subscribe. That's the best support you can give us. And we are recording this just before Thanksgiving. I don't know when this one's going to get released, but when you listen to this, hopefully you either A, you've had a great Thanksgiving, or B, you're about to have a great Thanksgiving. So with that being said, let's just skip right to it. And let's bring Will Matheson in.
Hey, Will, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. And by the way, I think that was the best opening credit scene for a podcast I've been on. That was really great.
Yeah, well, you got to get pumped up, man. When Jason's like, I'm gonna make it open, I was like, dude, come on, man. He's like, no, it's gonna be good. I was like, whatever, dude. And then he put that together. I was like, all right, that's fair, man. That's a good one.
So, doesn't give much value.
Like it was like mid 2000 Sports Center intro or something.
Yeah. That's a good way to refer back to it. I like that, the highlight reel. So either way, Will, where are you joining from us, and want to just kind of quick introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, no, my name is Will Matheson. I run the company Matheson Capital with my twin brother Evan. We're based here in Charleston, South Carolina, with, as you mentioned, a focus on southeastern multifamily and student housing.
Nice. So how did you, and by the way, Charleston's a beautiful city, a growing city. I guess let's go back. Like, where did you get your start in real estate? Was it something that, you're working another W-2 job and then you're like, hey, I want to get into real estate? Or did you go to college for real estate and then take a career path down that road? What does that look like? How'd you get started?
So for me and my brother, real estate, our family's been in real estate for a while. Seemingly everyone on my mom's side of the family works for CBRE up in Canada. My mom was a residential real estate agent. Amazingly enough, I did not focus on real estate during college. Neither did my brother. It just never occurred to me to do it. But both of our first jobs out of college were at Marcus & Millichap. Eventually in the Raleigh, North Carolina office, where we focused on retail and some multifamily and some student housing.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe talk about kind of the first deal you guys did. What year did you, leave, Marcus & Millichap and start your own shop? And let's talk about that a little bit, kind of how you felt throughout that transition, and then maybe go into kind of your first deal.
So I touched on the hard money loan I did with you before we started recording. That was while I was still working at Marcus. As far as owning a deal, we left Marcus in the beginning, let's say spring of 2017. We left there to go to Columbia University's Master's in Real Estate Development program. Brokerage had been nice, but we really wanted to get in the ownership side. Thought that'd be a good place, meet a lot of people, learn some things that you just weren't exposed to. And graduating there is May 2018, but we actually bought our first deal with a classmate of ours in Los Angeles in January of 2018. We sold it in March of 2018. I feel silly for saying it. There's not a ton to say because it was just the three of us. We raised a little bit of money pretty much. But we only owned the property for 2 months. bought it for 800,000, sold it for 985 in March, and then we bought another property with a small group of investors. We had raised a little bit of capital in May 2018, sold it by, I want to say, October 2019. That was our first two deals.
Yeah, and they were both wins.
Yeah, the second California one was a little more complicated due to emergency rent control, which is one of the reasons I don't invest in California anymore. Supply and demand really sneaks up on you if you are the government of California, apparently. But so that took off about 10% of our exit value, which was pretty unfortunate, but it was still a win for us.
What it just occurred to me. I've always been interested related to learning the art of real estate in college or in a master's program. Like, do you think that was a good use of time, a good use of money, a good, was it one of those things that you'd recommend for other folks to do to get into this space? Or do you think that you could have learned everything that you needed kind of on site?
So my answer to that is it really depends. It really depends on what you want to do. For us, it really was kind of a hybrid approach for us where, if you want to go and work for some big firm, a Blackstone, a Carlyle, or something like that, having that background, having that pedigree really works. And it does expose you to a lot of parts of the business, the private equity sides, things like that, I just wasn't seeing when I was a broker. But, plenty of people get into the business. They start small. We started small and you scale up from there. We did the same thing. So in some sense, I guess what I'm saying is we still started small even after going to the program. But a big reason we started small is we bought our first property when we were 25. No one was going to give us $10 million. Rightfully so. I mean, I don't hold that against anybody. But I think it helped us in terms of getting a lot of exposure to things we wouldn't otherwise know, and then helping us scale up with those relationships, with those connections, with that background. I think it's helped us scale up over the last 5 years. Obviously, there are other groups that have done it in different ways. Rise 48 comes to mind. Tides comes to mind. But, those two are really outliers. What they've accomplished is really incredible. I don't think that's necessarily the best roadmap for everybody.
Yeah. I graduated college. Ian didn't go to college. We've got lots of friends that are successful that have upper graduate degrees. We have a lot of friends that are successful that barely graduated high school. So I always feel like that's a good, there's no right or wrong. I'm just always curious to see what people got out of it. And, Ian and I, the word is not debate. That's not the right way to look at it. But like, we always talk about it. And I'm like, listen, I didn't really get the education component as much out of college as I did the relationships and the responsibility and all the other aspects of it. The education was the education, but at the same time, like, there's still a lot of value, to get from some of those things. I was just curious.
I would say is, sorry, Jay, just to cut you off real quick before you change subjects, is like, sometimes I'm like, man, what do the classically trained guys have up on us? But I also needed the school of hard knocks to kick me in the face, because I don't learn any other way than by doing, So there's sometimes like a jealousy factor of like, hey man, like, I wish I went to school. I would have learned X, or I would have learned Y, and I would have never had to feel this pain. But then again, sometimes theory doesn't always apply to real world experiences. It's actually funny. A friend of ours had me come talk to his Georgetown MBA or Masters of Real Estate program or whatever it was. And I said, Bob, why do you have me talking to these guys? And he's like, because you actually do real estate. And kind of like what you said, he's like, a lot of these guys are going to go on to work for big firms and big shops and never actually go out and execute deals. So I think that's a testament to you to go to that and then go out and actually execute deals. I think that's, a lot of people get caught up. Oh, I'm just going to go apply my degree, go work for the guy, for the man, and then take the safe road rather than go out and really expose yourself and take some real true risk to build the portfolio that you've built. Right.
Well, Ian, I'm actually going to take your side even further, which would seemingly be against what I did. But yeah, our first few deals that we bought and really had to operate, we bought 3 deals in the Carolinas in 2019, raising money from people. Like, I would be really honest, we made quite a few mistakes on those deals. We learned from them, because even when you're a broker, being a broker, I think was great, because our day job was analyzing real estate. Our day job was valuing real estate. Where if you come at from it from a different perspective, it's purely an after hours thing. We were getting paid to learn about what we wanted to do in the future, but it's still completely different than operating. So, we made a few mistakes. You can kind of see on our timeline, if you're looking at our returns, the returns on deals we started buying in 2020 were a lot better than the returns we were buying on, or we received on deals we bought before 2020. We were still, even though I had been a broker, even though I had been to Columbia, we were still learning all this stuff, because yes, there is no substitute for actually being in the business itself. That's one of the things I don't understand about, the company that says, hey, you've worked with me for 5 years, go get your MBA, I'll pay for it, and then come back and you'll get a promotion. Well, wouldn't it have been better to work those 2 years instead of leaving to go get the MBA? Now, again, that's like consulting, so I don't.
Yeah, earn while you learn. That's always a big thing that we say. We'd rather take a guy that's green, that's coming into our company, and even if it doesn't matter what the job title is. Like, if you're green but you're willing to show up and work every day, that is tenfold better of an environment that someone shows up. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I've been doing HVAC for 40 years. Okay, well, that's cool, but like, how many bad habits do you have? The same thing is like, all right, well, I went to school to go be an accountant. Okay, well, how many bad habits do you have versus actually doing real life accounting? So, I think that's right. Again, it's really how you learn, right? And I think Jason hit it on the head, and you kind of alluded to it. Your network is, potentially tenfold what my network was when you guys got started, because you did go to college and there's certain things, and it's just really just applying the experiences that you have and tools in your toolbox to be able to go out and do deals. So, excuse me, guys, I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to go back on mute.
Yeah, no. And just to kind of drive one more point on this home, I think S2 Capital out of Texas, Scott Everett, I think, the founder of that, I think I think he's a high school graduate. I don't know that he went to college or he graduated college. He was on another podcast recently. I don't think he's ashamed of that. He's pretty upfront about it. But what S2 has done in terms of the amount of acquisitions they've done, there is no substitute for experience and getting in there and doing the job. No substitute for it.
No doubt. So what type of student housing projects do you guys look for? What size, what size facilities? What are you looking for value add projects? Are you converting multifamily properties into student housing? Like, walk us through a little bit of that.
So student housing, I mean, we're typically looking for purpose-built student housing. So, it was designed to be student housing from the get-go. Anytime you can do value add, it's obviously a plus. As I mentioned before we started, we had the opportunity to work with a group out of Texas, NITU Capital, on some pretty large student housing deals in North Carolina in the App State, Boone market. But student housing, I think it's a lot like multifamily housing. There's a few more variables you need to take into account. What's the enrollment of the school? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? How much are you competing with the traditional multifamily market? But honestly, I kind of think in some ways, I think it's a little bit easier than multifamily because the revenue is really smooth. You're signing year-long leases. They're often parentally guaranteed by the parents. So you're getting often better credit than you would in workforce housing properties. Your delinquency is pretty low. And as long as you can nail your turns come the end of July, beginning of August, you can be in a pretty smooth revenue state the entire time. It's almost a net lease deal in some respects.
Do they? I'm just the only experience I have with student housing is back in the college days, but which was a while ago. So I'm guessing after you get these things leased up per year, I mean, they're all obviously all year to year, or whatever, 9 months. But after that, for the most part, I'm assuming like most most people that are renting it, students that are renting them the next year, are just referrals and things like that, right? Like people know that they're there. Like I'm guessing there's not a ton of marketing on them, and I'm assuming they all lease up at the same month every year, right? Like
so it depends on the school. No, typically, so if you pick a nice market like in Boone, you'll typically have it be the case where you start signing your leases for, let's say, the 24-25 school year. You're going to start signing those in, honestly, this month, November. We set our rates already. Other markets, University of Tennessee is very advanced, but so people don't show up to school and say, hey, I need a place to live. They plan that out
that's true.
months in advance.
Interesting.
Now, to your point about how often are you turning over the units, that depends on the school. Wake Forest has 3 years of on-campus housing. Duke University has 3 years of on-campus housing. So in that sense, you're pretty much targeting grad students, or you're pretty much targeting seniors. Yeah, you're going to turn over your rent roll pretty much every single year. And that's something you have to take into account when you're looking at it.
Is the turnover costs more expensive or less expensive than like a multifamily, type of thing?
So, I mean, it really depends on how you value it. I mean, from a per lease perspective, I would say it's probably less, but that's because you could have 4 leases in one unit. You value it per bed, not per unit. So the cost of turning one multifamily unit, let's just say it's $2,000 to turn a multifamily unit. It might cost you more per bed or less per bed to turn a thing, but per unit it'll be more expensive.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then what about security deposits, all that fun stuff, still the same as like a standard multifamily lease?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Again, there's always, it gets a little more specific per market, but I mean, it's the same concept as multifamily. It's not short-term rentals. It's not hotels. It's just your leasing cycle is very, very concentrated.
Yeah, normally, like when we do, I would say normally. Sometimes when I leave these, I'm like really envious. I'm like, dude, that's a great idea. I don't know why student housing it seems like a potentially a big workload. But I guess like, all right, my busy season is only July, and I got to knock it all out in July, and that's my hardest month. So I can see some predictability in your business versus, all right, I don't know how many people are moving out this month, or I'm going to try to project, all right, 5 unit turns. Let's keep it moving. You're like, no, I got to do the whole building this month. So I can see some benefits there. You have any good, crazy student housing stories that you're like, dude, this is why you either A, really want to do it, or B, you really don't want to do student housing? Because my mind goes to frat parties. It's like, that's all but I didn't go to college, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do to a certain extent think the Animal House stereotype for what a student housing property looks like it's a bit outdated. I don't, like obviously you'll have, maybe someone punches a hole in a wall every now and then, but because of the predictability, because you're starting your leasing cycles so far in advance. I mean, you start pre-leasing for the next year in November, you're just watching it tick up. I'm 10%, 20%, 30%, 50%, 70%, not 100% pre-leased. You're just watching that come up. So at the end of the day, you're really just, as you said, it's all, can I turn these units on time? Which is one of the reasons I really don't recommend owner managing student housing unless you have a massive footprint. I always say if you want to, you want to make sure the contractors show up on time to turn those units, because if you miss the turn schedule, you can be in some pretty big trouble.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask related to management was, you guys managing this stuff yourself, or you have third-party management, and, how's that set up? Is the same management company that manages everything, or are they all just localized in each market?
No, so for student housing, all of our student housing currently is in Boone, North Carolina. And we use local firms that specialize in student housing over there. Outside of that, for our multifamily portfolio, we work with a group out of Charlotte, Stintino Management. It's actually a classmate of ours from Columbia. He comes in our ownership group and owner manages the properties in that way. So we're kind of growing with him on that front. But the student housing stuff, I think it's important. You want someone who has a big presence in the market. I always say, if Graystar's in the market and they're going to turn 1,000 beds of student housing, they're going to get contractors showing up because they've got 1,000 beds worth of revenue that contractor is going to get. Whereas if you're there with 100 beds, every other firm is probably going to get better pecking order than you.
Nice. And then they'll do, and then those firms, one stop shop, they'll do all leasing there, management and turnover and repairs.
Yeah, more or less.
I should say. That's good.
Yes.
Is the monthly fee similar to multifamily? Like, are we looking at that, either 4 to 10%? Like, are we looking at that, or is it above because there's more active management on the property?
Sorry, can you repeat the start of that question?
The property management fee that you're paying to the property manager, is it, similar to multifamily, somewhere 4 to 10%, depending how you have it set up?
Yeah, I mean, typically you'll have your payroll and you'll have your management fee. All in cost is probably going to be somewhere between 7 to 10%, management plus payroll plus burden.
Yeah, makes sense. So on these particular deals, did you get some sort of bank or institutional financing on the front and either raised capital, through a fund or just through like LP investors? For equity, is it set up? Is the capital stack similar to multifamily?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, the lending is slightly different because the asset is slightly different. But it's the same general, you can get Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans on student housing the same way you can on multifamily. You can syndicate the money from investors the same way you can on multifamily.
Yeah. And, obviously, I guess it's a good asset class that they want to be in, right? Because we still live in the college boom, even though, I guess maybe if you want to talk about that, like, seems as though on the internet or the interwebs, and maybe because we're all entrepreneurs, we get served those type of ads, but is the velocity of kids still wanting to go to college, right? Like when we were all coming up, it's like, graduate high school, go to college, graduate high school, go to college. I feel like we're getting away from that a little bit. I mean, do you see any market downturn there, or are you still seeing the same velocity post-COVID and with how people are looking at, potentially just going right into entrepreneurship or skipping college?
So you will definitely see some universities contracting. A big part of that is what I think the years 90, 91, and 92 were essentially like a secondary baby boom. They were some of the highest birth years ever. I was born in 92 for context. So I think you are going to see student enrollments go down. You're already seeing it at some universities, but that's, that becomes a question of, well, which universities do you want to invest in? It's not just any student housing. Not all student housing is created equal. It helps to be in states like multifamily. You want to be in states with a growing population, but for the first time in a while, to your point, I think you really need to pay a lot more attention to what's the tuition to go to the university. People talk about that a lot more than they seemingly used to 10 years ago. I graduated college in 2014. I guarantee some people were just taking out loans and saying, we'll see what happens, not really putting too much thought into that. But, if you're, the way I kind of look at student housing is you want to be at state schools or highly prestigious schools. State schools because they're the most affordable alternatives. They're the most affordable schools. Prestige schools because we have not yet reached the point where Duke or Vanderbilt or Harvard has someone saying, no, I don't want to go there because it's too expensive. Like I talked about, obviously it's more specific, but if you can get a good student housing property at Duke, they have the 3-year on-campus housing thing making it tough. But if you can get good student housing at Duke, people are going to go to Duke. It's Duke. Not because of the basketball, because it's,
that's right.
What, Duke, Vanderbilt, and Emory are the top 3 schools in the Southeast. I went to Emory, so I'm biased. I'm going to throw that in there.
Fair. I mean, dude, it makes sense. I mean, growing up around here outside of Philadelphia, everything was the Penn State craze. I did not get involved in the Penn State cult. I always thought it was weird. But, I can see how people are like, oh, mom went to Penn State. I'm going to Penn State. It's legacy. Like, I have to go. And this is the career I want to do. It's funny. Outside looking in, it's like, well, most people don't end up in the career that they study anyway. This is just a personal, and this is why we have a platform, because I get to talk shit, is I think you should go out and work and then decide what you want to do. I mean, what my brother did, he went out and worked. and he was a prison guard. And he's like, I'm going to prison every fucking day. I got to get out of this. And he went on to then go back to school and be a nurse because he wanted to change a career path or learn what you want to learn and then go get that next level of education. But hey, that's a personal preference. But I'd be interested to see what happens over these next 10 to 15 years as the internet and I hear a lot of people saying, hey, I have money set aside for my kids, but honestly, if they want to go to a trade school or if they want to go and take a class and learn, and I'd rather give them money to go start a business, let's see what happens. Some of that's my network, and some of that I believe is really happening in the world. So I'd be interested to see your thesis. I think you're right, but I'm also interested to see what that looks like over a period of time. But I guess if there is a downturn, technically those properties, while they might not cash flow as well, do you ever like back underwrite them to be like, well, if student housing falls out, this is what multifamily looks like in this place. Worst case scenario, I can still cover debt. Do you ever underwrite in that fashion, or are you just like, no, student housing, that's it. That's all this thing can be. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to lose my ass.
So there are some properties where you do kind of have to look at them that way just because the underlying student housing fundamentals are soft, like using Duke or using Wake Forest as an example, because they have that 3-year on-campus housing, there's a good chance that there's just not enough demand for the product there. But like I said, that's one of the additional variables that comes into play with student housing. Specifically, what does this university look like? Is it affordable? Is it strong enough academically so that if you do see the contraction, is it going to be the one that gets hurt? Because to your point, if people are more reluctant to go to school, if we just have a demographic reason that people aren't going to school, what's going to happen there? I think a lot of private liberal arts universities in the next 10, 20 years are going to be in a lot of pain because people just aren't going to pay $50,000 to go to a place that is not as strong in education as the state school in the same state.
Yep. No, definitely.
You're all frozen, Ian.
I was going to say, I think we lost him.
Housing, You're not doing ground up development, correct?
Yeah, we're not doing ground up development. I like to buy things that already cash flow. Call me old cat.
Yeah. So are all these on the student housing side? All of these have already been student housing to begin with. I'm guessing they're not huge value adds. I mean, maybe they are, but like when I say, you're not adding additional square footage. I mean, you're going in there and you're stabilizing these things better than they're trying to perform better than the previous owner, maybe upping rents if there's a demand for it.
Yes. I mean, updating the interiors, finding operational efficiencies, just your typical value add, the same way you would apply it in multifamily. Again, student housing versus multifamily. There are some properties out there you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Yeah, there's purpose-built student housing, but there's a lot of student housing that it's multifamily. It's just close to a campus.
Yep. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. Since you brought it up and I was about to ask, if you had to choose one asset class going forward for the next 10 years, because I'm in self-storage and multifamily, we mostly concentrate on self-storage and kind of stay on that side, but multifamily that fits in our buy box, we'll buy. But if you had to pick one asset, student housing or multifamily, which one would you choose over the next 10 years, you think?
Well, I mean, the majority of our portfolio is multifamily. I know we've been talking about student housing for the last 20 minutes, but the majority of what we own is multifamily. You can buy multifamily in, more markets. I would still bank on multifamily. Now, if you told me specific universities, be a more interesting conversation. But yeah, I still, the demographics of Carolina's multifamily, Carolina's Southeastern in general, we're going to continue to buy that.
Yep.
And most of your multifamily is local as well in the Carolinas.
It's all in the Carolinas. Everything we own right now is in the Carolinas.
So what, fast forward down the road a little bit, like what's your ultimate goal with growth? Are you at a stage right now where you're looking to slam on the accelerator and in essence, continue to buy? Or are you kind of like slow and steady? Let's just see what happens. If there's no deals out there in the next year, I'm not going to buy anything. Or, maybe somewhere in between, like what's your business look like in the next decade?
Yeah, so now our goal is to continue to buy. This is going to get me off on one of my favorite things to talk about. I actually think it's a great time to buy right now. Prices
Yep.
are down 15 to 20%. A lot of buyers, the most active buyers in the market from 2021 are all on the sidelines because if you were a big buyer back then, you have a lot of floating rate debt. I don't care if you capped it or not. That cap is coming due. Your investors are probably really irritated right now because they're getting crushed by the, interest rate reserves, or if there is no cap, then that's obviously a problem. So a lot of the biggest buyers are on the sidelines. Prices are down. It's hard to come by new debt. It's really hard to buy. It's a really bad time to sell. But just, the fact that it's hard to buy makes it a good time to buy. People all look back at 2010 and think, oh, what a great time to buy multifamily. I wish I'd been doing more of that. Well, everyone was scared. It was, banks weren't just giving money out to everybody. I put this in our newsletter that I sent out yesterday. I said, in order to be a buyer right now, you kind of need to fit this Goldilocks parameter. You have to have been active enough over the last few years that a bank is willing to lend with you, because they don't want to give it. Liquidity is tight. They don't want to just hand money out to people the way they did even a couple of years ago. But you also have to have been, secure enough. Either you refinanced, you sold. We sold the majority of our portfolio in Q4 of 21 and Q1 of 22. So you have to not have floating rate debt. So, your investors are happy. You don't have that hanging over your head, and brokers have to believe you're going to close. So, yeah, it's a really small buy box to fit in. And if you fit those three parameters, I think it's a great time to buy. I'm already seeing properties sell for less than they sold for in 2021. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there if you can meet those criteria, and we think we meet those criteria.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's what sets people aside, and I joke. I'm like, well, we were firemen. We'd run in when people were running out. And it's the same thing. And Warren Buffett talks about it in his book. Some of the best buys he made was when people were on the sidelines. I think Sam Zell kind of alluded to the same thing. The best buys he made was when people were on the sidelines. And I think if you listen to the mass media or whatever you want to call it, what everyone else is doing, you're not going to be successful. We started in 2013 and really ramped up in 14 to 19, just in the single family space. We didn't know that was the best time in the world to buy. We were just taking action because we didn't have trauma from 2008. We could just go do what we wanted to do because we had blinders on. But guess what? It turned out to be a great time to buy. And then over a period of time, you're going to figure out it's cost-based averaging. You're buying good. You're buying okay. You're buying marginal. But over the long run, if you're willing to stay in this game, you should be fine. You just got to continue to execute on those deals. So I agree with you. I think it's a great time to buy. I also think right now, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, as a buyer, I believe we can get more picky right now and deem better terms in this period because the lack of interest and the lack of deals getting done.
Yeah. So, one of my favorite things to say to people over the last few months has been, you get burned when the market's hot. 2021 was just absolutely insane. The only way to buy a property was with floating rate debt, hard, non-refundable money, day one, 80% LTVs. And, everyone was just go, 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 go. The market was so hot, people were throwing money in it. Yeah, that's when you get burned. It's not, I don't want to use the word tulip mania because that was just purely speculative. But yeah, I think to a certain extent, that's what you saw happening. So to your point about, can you be more picky? Well, you certainly don't have to put down non-refundable earnest money deposits anymore. How to phrase this? I've seen so many properties selling for less than they sold for. And I've also seen a lot of times where a property gets brought to market and they say, I want, $100 a door for it. And you just say, no, not interested. And they come back to you a week before call to offers and they say, hey, look, it's really closer to 85 right now. 88, 90 probably wins it for you. It's not a bunch of over ask stuff. So, you do have the terms to dictate it because, if you're forced to sell right now, you need a buyer who's going to close.
Yeah, we have a good one. We put an offer in on a CO storage deal, 10 miles from a facility that we own out in Mississippi. In August, I offered 365, decent terms, whatever. Heard nothing back from the broker. All right, whatever, dead deal. Or maybe he said they're not really interested right now. Out of the blue, last week, I get an email. Hey, seller said they'll take 3.5. I'm like, well, first off, I don't know if the terms even work, but it's just funny. 150,000 discount off my original offer is like, wow. And I didn't even ask for it. I didn't even follow up on the deal. They followed up with me to tell me that they'll take less than what I originally offered. So I think it's a sign of the market, and it's a sign of what's coming. And I think if you're diligent and you stand your ground and buy the deals that fit in your buy box, you will be really good. And if you can weather the storm over the next potentially 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, whatever it is, you weather that storm, you're going to make a lot of money on the backside of this storm. Whether debt moves or not, you're going to do pretty well over the long haul, I would think. So I'm excited. Sounds like you're excited, and I think we're all excited. Jason just makes hard money loans, so he doesn't give a shit what the market's doing. He just moves his lending value, and he's always protected in the market. So, but hey, we're all in different businesses. But Jay, you follow the market equally as much too. So,
no doubt. I mean, I might, we'll break it down to much simpler numbers. Like, I might lend $100,000 a day. That yesterday I might have lent 90 grand, or maybe yesterday I lent 101 or 110 grand, and today it's 100. Every new asset you underwrite with the knowledge that you learn from yesterday and what you predict the market's going to do. Also, in the hard money lending space, the terms are obviously shorter, so I don't have to have as much of a long-term approach. And listen, the first mortgage lender should always be the most protected, right, on it, but they also should be making the least amount of money on the transaction. So
here.
The developer and the speculator, if in essence, should make the most money on that thing. And as a general partner or an operator of real estate, they potentially should have the most risk and make the most reward, and that's fine. I'm happy to make my the returns that we make, not having to do as much work and being more conservative. So, and let's as we wrap up, do you think you're going to stay in the multifamily sector and the student housing sector, or potentially branch out to other commercial assets?
Yeah, our plan is to stay in those sectors for the same reasons that we got into them in the first place. It's really expensive to build housing in America. It's not even a red state, blue state thing, although I know that plays a part in certain localities. It's been hard to build. Construction has become less efficient since the 1970s. Land use restrictions, zoning, NIMBYism, whatever you want to call it. It's expensive to build housing. People need places to stay. It's not really impacted by e-commerce. All the demographic reasons, we're going to continue to look into multifamily and student housing. As I've said, it depends on the school. It depends on the school that you're investing in. So we're going to be staying in that lane.
Yep. No, that definitely makes sense. And that's good to hear. And I believe that you'd be an opportunistic investor like the rest of us. You see something that's got a little different, hey, maybe I can make $1. You're going to dip your toe in, but if not, you're going to stay in your lane and make the money how you make it. So that's good to hear. What, we've talked about a lot of real estate. What do you like to do for fun outside of real estate? Anything, any good hobbies?
I like to play some chess. I really love to follow the NFL. I'm not a college football guy. Emory doesn't have a college football team, but I am a Panthers fan, so that's been pretty rough.
It's been a rough couple of years for you. I mean, I'm an diehard Eagles fan, so I get to tip my hat for once, and it's been a good couple of years. So,
I find myself cheering for the Eagles because one, they were my favorite team when I was like 9 years old. I just picked all the bird teams. Should have stuck with that. And my brother-in-law is from Philadelphia, so he's obviously very happy, and I'm happy for him.
There you go. All right, we're bonding here. What I see that are you still getting your pilot's license? I recently got mine and trying to finish up my instrument as we speak.
Yes, very slowly, very, very slowly. I one time had 6 straight weeks rained out. I can only do it on the weekends. I had 6 straight rain outs, so it's taken a while.
Yeah, it took me almost a year to get it, and then now that I got it, it's like, damn, I just need a plane. And I keep talking with Jay because I'm like, Jay, dude, if I buy a plane, we can just shoot down to Pinehurst and go play or wherever, So it'd be fun, but definitely do go get your license. It's a fun challenge. There's one question that we like to ask all of our guests. What's one book or podcast that you think everybody should read or listen to that you think they would get value out of?
I'll give you one of each. Honestly, my favorite business podcast is the Rate Guy podcast. No offense to you two. The Rate Guy podcast by the people over at Pensford Capital. It's the only, weekly podcast where they'll talk about interest rates for 20 minutes. So, I mean, what more could you ask for in this world of ours?
Yeah, well, everybody wants to wake up and find out what's going on with the rates. I just call my debt broker. I'm like, where are we at? And he's like, dude, I keep telling you, just look it up. I'm like, no, dude, I'm just going to call you. It's easier, but I'll have to look that one up. The Rate podcast.
The Rate Guy podcast. You tell your debt broker that when you stop calling him, that's when he should start being sad. Otherwise, you just enjoy his company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I said I'd give you one of each. The book, I always have it on my desk when I do this. The book I really enjoyed was Letters of a Businessman to His Son by G. Kingsley Ward. I try not to go with something that everyone's read, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I really enjoyed this book. It's just the perspective of a father writing letters to his son about business. And one of my favorite lessons in it is him talking about, if a bank's not willing to give you money for it, they might be doing you a huge favor, and maybe you shouldn't be mad at them. Like they do know what they're doing. They want to make money too. So.
Yep, and they look at way more deals than we do. That's what I early on in real estate, we would borrow money from Jason, and I'd be like, all right, well, I know he's conservative sometimes, but I'm like, if they don't want to lend on it, maybe this isn't as good of a deal, or maybe we're misreading the ARVs or whatever, because he looks at deals every day. He's got thousands of inbound leads that we don't get. We're only looking at a very minute piece of the market. So that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So Will, where's the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn more about Matheson Capital. Where can they track you down?
So I always tell people, go to our website, mathcap.com, mathcap.com. You can schedule a call with me directly through that. We can learn, schedule a call, I'll tell you more about the firm, learn more about your investment criteria, see how we can potentially work together.
Perfect. Will, we certainly appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing some information with everybody. I'm sure everybody got a ton of value. I definitely learned a little bit related to the student housing sector. Definitely something I'm interested in. So certainly appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.